The people of the city who sold the main street of the city. Now, we're talking about a street where they davened on Tanesim, so there was some minimal degree of kedusha attached to the street of the central street of the city. Otherwise, there'd be no issue. But it said since there was a minimal degree of kedusha attached to it, because they used to daven there on fast days, you need the money, use the money to upgrade to a shul. Basically, if you sold a shul, you need to upgrade lochim teva to buy a box, and this box is probably the box in which they laid. That's what it is. Teva, they sold the bima, the teva. Lochim mitpachos, they would take mantlach, which are wrappings for Sefer Torah. Mitpachos, if they sold the wrappings, lochim sfarim, they would buy sfarim themselves. Sfarim, lochim Torah, they would buy, if they sold sfarim, which could be any time, which could be Nevi'im, Ksuvim, they would buy a Torah. Torah, that's only, you can only escalate. You can't go down. What's the word?
The other way.
Desolate or something. I forget what the word is. No, there's a word for it. Decelerate. You can't decelerate. Escalate and decelerate. Right. Torah, if you could sold the Torah, lo yichud sfarim, you cannot buy sfarim. Nach Sfarim, you sold nach, lo yichul mitpachos, you cannot buy mantlach, mitpachos, mantlach, lo yichul teva, you can't buy bima, teva, lo yichul beis hakneses, you can't buy a shul, beis hakneses, the border shul, lo yichul sarachov, sold a shul, lo yichul zarachov, you cannot buy a street, v'cheim mosreim. And if you have excess money, let's say left over after you bought the intended object, you can't use it for one of the lower things. You still have to leave it for the higher purpose. Rabbi Yochanan, that's why, for example, this is a very much lochel when you sell a shul, you can't just take them out, although there are obviously loopholes to all these halachos, but theoretically, when you sell a shul, because the neighbor changed, you can't just give the money to, whoever the last member is, because it really has kedusha to it. It has to go to some higher purpose, either to another shul or up, right? Unfortunately, as I said, there are abuses of the system, but that's really how the way it's supposed to work. All right? Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, the Rabbi Menachem Rabbi Yossi, this our mission is like Rabbi Menachem Rabbi Yossi. The Rabbi Menachem Rabbi Yossi, Amar Rechova Shalia, the central street of the city, Yesh Lo Kedusha has sanctity, Shekei Motzi and Sefer Torah, they take a Sefer Torah, B'korim Baram, and they lay in public on a tinus. Says Baram, however, Kirabonon, the Rabbanon hold that it has no kedusha. They dive in there. So we gave it a minimal. I see. I don't know exactly how to categorize it. This is even a lower degree of kedusha. What is that? They made it like something you have to distance yourself from arba amos. Like, what do we mean by that? It says if you daven somewhere, you shouldn't spit until you've walked 4 amos away from that place. So too, you're not supposed to spit within 4 amos of the place where they daven and lane on a tinus. But it doesn't have any kedusha. In other words, you can sell that street and use the money you realize for anything you want. So they argue, and Rabbi Menachem Rabbi Yossi, there's Rabban, and they say there's no kedusha to the street. Vice versa, Rabbi Yisrael Roking, somebody who spits, he should distance himself 4 amos from where he spit before he davens.
What about people that say Elena would spit?
Well, I'm shocked that you put that on tape, but
say who does it.
It's I don't know. It's a reprehensible practice. I think. Obviously they have some call for it, but okay. Tani, we learned. Can I see turn on the fan, please?
What do they spit for? Shehem Shtachim?
Yeah. Shehem Shtachim.
Yeah, right.
They go. You just pull the string. Oh.
Just pull the string?
Yeah. The same thing.
Everyone's maybe.
So no, they go like this, and they spit on the floor, and they ground it into. Tani, we learned. It's kind of revolting whenever I see it. Tani mispal lo yatil mayim. Somebody who davens should not urinate at shi'alich arba amos. In other words, shouldn't go right. Some people say right as they're saying later they're running into the bathroom. No, you have to. So after you finish the you wait the amount of time it takes to go 4 amos, and then you go to the bathroom, right? And vice versa. Somebody urinated, I spal shi'alich arba amos. You shouldn't daven until he walks 4 amos. In both cases, you do not have to physically walk the 4 amos. You have to wait the amount of time it takes to walk 4 amos, which is a couple of seconds. Okay, so you have to wait a couple of seconds before you, after you daven, before you spit. When you spit, before you daven. After you urinate, before you daven. When you when you dive after you urinate, all these things has to be a hefsek. This is a halacha ma'is. You never heard this before?
No. What I'm surprised is that Rabbi Yaakov Bar Acha found it necessary to say.
Oh, you mean it was obvious?
Yeah.
No, it's not obvious because we said before by the chova shalir, it's literal. I mean, there we said it's literal, so I guess it's not obvious. I mean, you're right. To me, it was obvious too, but maybe it's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll say when you leave Eretz Israel, when you go there, you have to tell them you go when it's
Yerida.
Yerida, which means
going down. Okay.
Well,
so says the Gemara, Im oimer at top of Chav Gimel. Im oimer at shi'alich arba amos ye aser. If you're going to say that literally has to go mean that you walk away 4 amos, so then afani oimer echad bavi til shop, who said there's nowhere you're necessarily going to go, whereas you're not going to be within 4 amos of somebody who spit once upon a time. So therefore, obviously, there might be spittle or urine anywhere you go. So therefore, what it means is you have to wait the amount of time after you spit or after you urinate or vice versa, which it takes, but not literally took for a place where nobody ever urinated or spit before. Okay, by Shnoi, the people of Baishon, Shalom Rabbi Amiyas Rabbi Amali Kachavani Beis Knesset. Can we take stones from this shul, leave those Beis Knesset Acheres? Now this is clear that I saw about a shul which was destroyed. Can you take the stones from the destroyed shul and build a new shul? Say you take from a shul which was destroyed in Germany.
It's a lateral transfer. It's not.
That's what you think, right?
Actually, isn't there a Gemara somewhere that says
Sounds good
that
to me.
the people of Gola went and built a shul called Shof Yosef in Bavel?
Yeah.
Stones of a shul in Eretz Yisrael.
in front of where we're
I remember the base class of Shafi Yosef. I don't remember that they built it from stone there. It's just
from the stones of a shul in Eretz Yisrael.
I don't remember such a thing, but he answers it. Amar Loni said Aser. Said to them it's Aser. Amar Rebbe said Lo Aser Yami El Minei Agmas Nefesh. You should know it's not Aser Mikra Din. The Gemara beginning of Baba Basra says you're not allowed to destroy one shul unless you have another shul ready standing, right? But if another shul is ready standing, you're allowed to destroy the first shul, right? And and even some say even if you have a place to daven which is not a shul, but in any event, there's no din which prevents you from taking the stones of one shul and using to build another shul. But he's saying that way you're never going to rebuild the first shul. We rather would have you confronted with those stones. Maybe there's a chance someday you'll rebuild that shul in that spot. Otherwise, the shul will be forgotten, the place will be forgotten, and afterwards once a shul. So therefore, he's not answering Mikra Din. He's answering as a chumrah in order to get them to feel upset and rebuild the shul.
Okay, so in case you started to talk about in Germany or any of
or let's say where they have had the foresight to dismantle the shuls on the west side or any other decaying neighborhood, they could have moved them because there ain't nobody going back, right? Agmas Nefesh is Shaykh. Let's say if a shul in a Jewish neighborhood falls down, so then Agmas Nefesh is Shaykh that, but obviously in these situations it's not relevant. Okay? That's what I think. That's the Pshat in the Gemara is. We'll see later on. I think it'll be clear that's the case. Rabbi Guyen Amar, Rabbi Guyen said, Mugdaloi, the people of Magdala, Shalom Rabbi Shimon Lok Shazer Shalok Shmali Kach Avanim Meir Zuv Limnos Bira Cheres. This is talking about, interestingly, Shari Teresel gives a beautiful shot. He says though about in Eretz Yisrael. He says in Eretz Yisrael, what happens if you have, let's say, the stones of a building fell down in let's say Tveria. Okay, you take the stones and rebuild them in Migdal, which is a nearby city, or vice versa. So it says it's Osir. Amalan Osir. Why? Because of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, says the Shari Torah Eretz Yisrael. Because in essence, it's you're going to, what you did is, there's now a spot which was once housed by Jews in Tveria, which is no longer there. And you're taking the stones and moving them to Migdal. That's nice. But if you leave the stones there in Tveria, maybe someday you'll come and rebuild now this is not relevant to, let's say, a case like Yamit, right? Because in Yamit they weren't going back, right? There was no hope of that.
Well, you're saying when they had the earthquake, you just leave the stones.
If you leave the stones, maybe they'll rebuild in that spot, right? Okay. In Tzfas, they're still. It's amazing. It's an earthquake. I think it was in the early 19th century, but there's still heaps of rubble all over the place. Yeah.
Why don't they rebuild it?
Because they're poor. The Israeli government doesn't give them any money.
What, did Rav Gurion have a son?
I don't know. Good question. Okay.
Sorry.
I'm alone. Holy Rabbi Ami. Rabbi Ami said, "I feel me Mizrachel Ma'arava Aser." Even from the east side of the city to the west side of the city is forbidden. Because that side of the city is becoming desolate. You know, the changing neighborhood. That's no good. Can you sell a shul and buy a Beis Medrash? Milsa Rabbi Shua ben Levi Amar Shari. Rabbi Shua ben Levi seems to indicate that it's mutter. The Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, "Vayisrof es Beis Hashem." He burned down the Beis Hamikdash, the house of God. This is talking about it's a Malachim. Of course, it's talking about the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash, but we're going to dash about the second Beis Hamikdash as well. Right, so it was the Beis Hashem, the Beis Hamikdash. But Beis Hamikdash now, the kings of Paltin Shel Tzidkiyo, the palace of Tzidkiyo, the one of the last kings of Yehuda. But Kobate Yerushalmi Megillah house Yerushalmi Elu. These were 480 Bate Knesses, 480 shuls. Shall you be Yerushalayim? The Pinchas says B'Shem Rabbi Yoshia 480 Bate Knesses, 480 shuls of Yerushalayim. Achas v'achas, each every one. Hoyla Beit Sefer had a school attached to it, Sunday school. Uveis Talmud and
attached to the Sunday school.
And they had a Beis Talmud as well. Beis Sefer is Lemikra, that's for Chumash. Beis Talmud is Lemishnah. The Kulam, and this was shifting from Bayis Rishon to Bayis Sheni. Ola Aspasianus, Vespasian came and destroyed them. Chrivan, it should be. Doesn't say it, but that's what it should say. That's called bicycle celebration. The entire big house he burned in fire. That we darshan should be Zeb Beis Medrash show. That's the Beis Medrash show. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. It's interesting. Vespasian spared Yerushalayim, spared Yavne, but not the Beis Medrash Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai in Yerushalayim. Right? He spared Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's Beis Medrash in Yavne, but not the one in Yerushalayim that was destroyed. Okay, Shesham, what they used to do in Beis Medrash Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Sheshama yu masnin gedulos of Shakadosh Baruch Hu. There they used to tell over the greatness of Hashem. What's the greatness of Hashem? The Torah. Kegon such as Sapa na Li as called those Shras Elisha. The wonders of Hashem are like the wonders which Elisha did, and these as a Navi, and these are the wonders of Torah.
Well, where's this pasuk Beis and Gadol?
This is part of the same pasuk in Malachim Beis. The thing is, I don't know how the raya is from Rabbi Shua ben Levi. I guess because it says it's escalating. It says the Beis Medrash is Gadol. Right? The Beis HaKnesses is just called in this pasuk Bat Yerushalayim, but the Beis Medrash is called Bayis HaGadol. So you see that the Beis Medrash is higher than a shul. I don't know if we paskin everything. I think we paskin the other way. I think we paskin that you cannot sell a shul and buy a Beis Knesses because the Beis Medrash has less kedusha than the Beis Knesses. I think I didn't look it up for today, but I think that we're not allowed to sell. In fact, You're not allowed to sell. What? Coal is a base medrash. Coal is you sell to the highest bidder. Okay. So, it says when Rabbi Shlomo Nachman said, "Hota dat Omar." That which you said you can sell a shul, the base Knesset shuyach is a shul. Maybe this is a continuation. I thought this is a separate Gemara, but now looking at it, thinking it's a continuation. That which you can sell a shul to be the shul base managed is a base Knesset of a yachid, an individual shul, a private shul. I will be base Knesset Rabbim. If it's shul, the masses also, it's forbidden. Ani omer echo misof olam konuibo. Somebody from the rest of the world could have a chelik in it. So it's interesting. Like, let's say this shul is owned by Mr. Davis, or Rabbi Achenstein shul is owned by Rabbi Achenstein, or Rabbi Small shul is owned by Rabbi Small, right? So those shuls, these people could sell, but Bnei Ruvain is not owned by anybody.
Right.
It's not owned by, it's a base Knesset shel Rabbim. And that means really not, even if you got all the people in the city to agree, still maybe somebody from Pottsville, Lubavitch is a community, maybe they want to daven Bnei Ruvain when they come to Chicago. So they actually have a chelik in it. So it's interesting, you cannot sell a base Knesset shel Rabbim, only a base Knesset shel Yachid. However, there's a caveat here, which the Yerushalmi doesn't make so explicit, although later on it will, is that this is only if you don't have the Shiva Tova Yair B'Mamad Anshe Yair. If the 7 aldermen together in the assembly of all the members of the city do not gather together, then he can't sell it. In other words, the board of directors can't sell the shul. But if the entire assembly of the city, together with the 7 aldermen, gather together and make such a decision, then they can sell shul even if it's a big Knesset shel Rabbim, which is interesting chiluk. Okay, that means it's kind of like Hefker based in Hefker type thing. Once the government is involved, it's different. Yes.
I was wondering about the phrase Zayin Tuvei earlier. Does that mean, does it actually have to be constructed? There has to be such a body constructed in such a way to have a Zayin Tuvei, or just does it mean like the
aldermen? It does have to be specifically 7. No, but it has to be aldermen. There have to be people who were selectmen or aldermen or whatever you want to call them. It has to be a city council, actually.
Of the whole city, or just the Jewish community?
Just the Jewish community, yeah. And you're talking about here, Eretz Yisrael. Anyway, it's not just about Jews.
So those Jewish communities these days aren't organized in such a way. Yeah,
it's a problem. So we wouldn't be able to sell a shul. You would not be able to sell a shul like Bnei Ruvain. You could sell the shul, the private shul, but not Bnei Ruvain, not Or Torah. One of these you could not sell because they're based Knesset shel Rabbim. You need to have a constituted Jewish community in order to do it.
It's rather interesting. It goes back to the Salem Mizrahi building. There's also a shul.
Yeah.
The only objection at that time is who the buyer was.
Now that's a question. The changing neighborhoods issue is a question. In other words, when the neighborhood has changed to such an extent that there's nobody left to daven there. So it's an anasadi. In other words, the whole thing is that maybe somebody from St. Louis will come to Chicago and want to daven in that shul, right? But ain't nobody coming from St. Louis to daven at Chevron Mishnah Gemara on Douglas Boulevard. Right, they're all davening in Chevron Mishnah, maybe Chevron Mishnah Gemara on California. Even that, right, we miss a book, but definitely not Chevron Mishnah over there. That's why it's a church, I guess. Even though that's also for other reasons. Okay. You guys should come down one Tisha B'Av and take the tour when we go. It's fascinating. What? It was filled last Tisha B'Av? The ghosts are heavy in the air. All right. It's actually ironic because this neighborhood has survived for much, much longer than the whole Lawndale neighborhood survived. Lawndale neighborhood was from the early 20s until the late 50s. And this West Riders Park has been here already, longer than that. Almost 40 years. So it's interesting.
Gone down to Vine Avenue lately?
No, okay, you're right. Touche. Okay. Says go further. Vatani, and we have a riot for this. A Meiser Reb Lezer, it's a kasha actually. V'atay Nimila Meiser Reb Lezer Reb Tzadok Shloka Beis Knesset Alexandria. We took the Alexandrian shul. You know, they had back then also the shuls were named after the Landschaften, which created them. In other words, everybody named the shul after their own shtetl. So the Alexandrians, when they moved to Yerushalmi, they called their shul the Alexandrian shul, right? So he bought it, and I guess he made a kolel there. So Alexandrian, so there, how can he buy it? So Alice says, well, Alexandria, most of some Mishlats and Alexandrians pay for it themselves, and they retain the ownership over it, and therefore is never considered to be Beis Knesset Shel Rabbim. Actually, doing Shabani L'Shem Beis Knesset. That makes sense if you build it for the purpose of a shul. Bani L'Shem Chotzer, whatever you built it for the purpose of a courtyard, it's a hall. V'ikdish Neim Mei Kodesh. Does that have the same status as a shul? So mountain. The Sheminim Edol, it's here from the Gemara in the Dharma. It says, Konam Bais Hazeh She'eni Nichnas. If I made an oath not to go into a house, V'naseh Beis Knesset, and it becomes a shul, I'm allowed to enter there. Right? That's what it says there in the Dharma. Hadar teaches us, Bani L'Shem Chotzer V'ki K'disha. If you build it for the purpose of a courtyard and then you made it Kodesh, it's Kodesh. Emasai Kodesh, when is a Kodesh? Miyad, immediately, when he designated it to be a shul, or B'shas Tashish, when he first used it for a shul. The Shemina Minadot, certain for your oath, a table, a shem sefer, if you make a bima for the purpose of the Sefer Torah, or mitpachos, or kerchiefs, wrappings, a shem sefer, achal nishtamish behem ha-sefer, mutal nishtamish behem hedyot. Until you actually use the sefer with them, you're allowed to use it for any purpose, common purpose. Nishtamish behem sefer, once you use the sefer with the kerchiefs or the wrappings, also nishtamish behem hedyot. A commoner may not use them. So my mele shnatsu shem sefer, these are made for the purpose of Sefer Torah, which is a higher madrega, and Kedosh Yitzel B'Shash Tashmish are only made holy at the time that they are used. Zosha B'Yah Shem Choter, those which are used for the purpose of a courtyard, Lo Koshkein, there's not a Kavachomer that did not become Kodesh until they're actually used. And the one is going to continue in this way. I just want to point out, though, that this in the Bible is a long sugya. In Sanhedrin Daf Mem Chesed Hazmana Milso Ein Hazmana Milso. You remember the sugya Hazmana Milso? Machlokas Abai and Rava, whether to designate something such as I tell designate Tefillin Zekel, right? Can I use it already because it's already a Tefillin sack, or it can still use it for my money? And there the Bible goes through a page and a half until we finally pass like Rava that Hazmana is Lav Milso.
But that is also in Sanhedrin too.
I said Sanhedrin. I said Sanhedrin.
I thought you said something else.
No, so I said, but I think it is somewhere besides Sanhedrin also. But I did say Sanhedrin. So in any event, so here Yerushalmi doesn't have, of course, Abai and Rav. It just has a few lines, and it's interesting. He brings a raya from Tosefta, which I just cursory look in the Bible they did not reveal. So I guess in the Bible they were not aware of this Tosefta, which Yerushalmi is quoting, which says quite explicitly that the bima is not kodesh until actually used for the Sefer Torah. Okay, otherwise could say a blot and a half of discussion there. So says Gemara, kind of drawing back, not drawing back, but reiterating. Those which are made for the purpose of chulin v'ikdish, and you consecrate them mayin. What's their status? Kamad Atamar Taman, just like we said over there by Benuya L'Shem Chotzer, you built the purpose of a courtyard Vikdishon, you made a Kodesh Kodesh. V'acha here too, Asal M'Shem Chulin Vikdishon, here when you made for the purpose of Chulin, then we're consecrating them Kodesh, therefore they're holy, fine, that's Chazor. But now we're taking it further. Clay Shores, vessel based on Mikdash, Me'ema Sahim Kodesh, from when do they become holy? Miyad, immediately when they're formed, when they're made, or b'shas tashmish, when the time of the use it. Item and miyad, if you're going to say they become kodesh immediately prior to use nicha, that's good. However, item b'shas tashmish, you're going to say at the time you use them ke'echad, as you put in a mincha, or as you put in blood, then name kodesh, then be kodesh at that time. How could that be? Kedoshim and miskad ke'echad, hem kedoshim miskadjim is a b'vas achas, because you're putting in something kadosh. And at that point it becomes kadosh. How could that be? That means that it's becoming kadosh and holding something kadosh at the same time. That doesn't make any sense, right? It should have to be kadosh before you put something holy into it. But you're saying the only time it becomes holy is when you actually use it, because hazmana's la milsa, preparation is not, designation is meaningless. So it says more a very interesting discussion here. Nichol shel Moshe. The kelim of Moshe Rabbeinu. When Moshe Rabbeinu made kelim in the midbar, she's kachim shemen hamishcha b'dam. So they were consecrated with oil, the anointing oil, and with blood of korbanos, which were sprinkled on them. So that was a consecration process which preceded their use. However, Vishel Shlomo, what about when Shlomo made came? There was no longer shemen hamishcha. Ke'achadem kadosh miskachim, they become kadosh, and were they used for Kodesh simultaneously? Says no, interesting. Because you saw us in Lawrence when they came to Eretz Yisrael, I'm mefanim mitoch shel Moshe l'toch shel Shlomo. When they came into Eretz Yisrael, they put stuff which was already Kodesh in the keli of Kelim of Moshe Rabbeinu into Shlomo's. Now I didn't explain properly the problem before. The problem is that if you let's say you're taking a piece of mincha, and it only becomes Kodesh when you put it in the Kli Shoros, right? So you have to put in the Kli Shoros and make it Kodesh at the same time make the Kli Shoros Kodesh. But the cause and effect is messed up. So the mincha only becomes Kodesh when it's put in the Kli Shoros. But the Kli Shoros is only going to become Kodesh when you put a mincha in it. So what comes first, the chicken or the egg? How it's going to work?
Why can't it be simultaneous?
Ultimately, the Gemara is going to end up it can't be simultaneous. So right now the brothers Gemara immensely. So the Gemara says, Moshe's Kelim were pre-consecrated. That's the first approach. Then the Gemara says, you know what? But what about the Kelim of Shlomo, which weren't pre-consecrated? So it says, there they took some which had already become Kodesh in Moshe's Kelim and poured into Shlomo's Kelim. So it didn't have to become Kodesh umiskadesh b'vas achas. So the stuff, Mitzvah was already Kodesh, and this was just extending the Kedusha further. That's okay.
What was it of Moshe's that existed for hundreds of years until...
No, the Kelim they used in the Mishkan were from Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, until Shlomo built new ones. Fine, says Gemara. But what about Lo Yoshim Shel Moshe? What about when they didn't have Moshe Rabbeinu anymore? Kach Sink Toshim Miskachim, they become Kadosh and bear Kedusha at once. Says Gemara, no. But Yerushalmi Megillah, they came back from Babylon. They used the Kelim of Shlomo, poured stuff in the Shlomo's came. There became Kadosh, and then they poured into their own, which consecrated it.
They still have the Kelim.
Lo Yoshim Shel Shlomo. If they didn't have Kelim of Shlomo, Ke'acha Sink Toshim Miskachim, then it happened simultaneously. Okay, it's all in the end of the time simultaneously. If you rocks which recorded for the purpose of a dead person, obviously to make a gravestone or such like, asuros, they are forbidden to use for anything else. They may not be benefit, may not be derived by a live person. Asus banoya, they're also banoah. Sorry. The shem Hashem is whatever you quarried stones, you did not designate. Some are for live people, some are for dead people. Mutaras banoah, since it wasn't designated, it's mutar banoah. Hazore clearly if you throw an object at the these things are brought down and still give us Zmana Milsa. These cases, if you throw stuff at the corpse or the buyer, the stretcher holding a dead body, so then l'toch harbam falls within his 4 amos, he acquires it. Actually, it's not a true kinyan, but it becomes aser banoah, right? Chutz harbam, so it doesn't reach the arba amos of the mate. Mutar banoah, they retain mutar banoah. Kol klei beis hakneses, now all klei beis hakneses like a shul. Saf solah, the benches, kaltura. Nobody knows exactly what a kaltura is. It's either a footstool or one other version is the bima. Another version is the aron itself. In any event, it's one of the furnitures in the Beis HaKnesses, right? Is like a shul, and therefore that's all kedusha of the shul. Kila da'arod, it's interesting, the truth is people take tables and chairs from shuls for simchas all the time. That's not so partial. If it's part and parcel of the shul, so you can't really use it for some other purpose. It's not a simple thing. That's what it says here, because just like a shul, you can't use it for a profane purpose. If you want to borrow chairs and tables for your cocktail party, it's no good.
But for Simchas Shel Mitzvah?
For Simchas Shel Mitzvah, maybe, but not for, let's say, a Super Bowl or something. It's a toeva of that sort, so you wouldn't be able to take over that.
What did you look at him?
Okay.
Super Bowl.
Okay, whatever. We have in the shul we have some rabid football fans. That's what it reminded me of. Okay. It says Gemara, kila dollar rona karona. The Gemara's initial statement is that the whatever the parochas, that's the kilo, the curtain, on the Aron is like the Aron. However, to take out the cuff here, Rabbi Avo, Yov Gulsa Tchusay used to hide his coat under the parochas. Why? Because he held it's not like it. Not like the Aron. Alright? Rabbi Yehuda B'Shem Shmuel said, Bima V'Levachin, the bima and the platform in front of it, some shuls is a platform which they stand when they're laning. Ein b'hem mishum kedushas aron. They don't have the kedusha of the aron, even though they stand in there and they use the beam when they're laning. It doesn't have kedusha of aron. V'yesh b'hem mishum kedusha basically it does kedusha of a shul, however. So therefore, on a bima you can lean. Actually, I have a shaila here in this shul. The aron, I lean on the aron because I stand next to the aron. So my heter to do that is because the aron itself is actually a safe, and the aron here is that wooden box is actually an elaborately constructed box around the safe, which is separate. And once upon a time there only was a safe, but an aron really has kedusha as tashmisha kedusha, and you can't use it to lean on. You can't really. The only heter we have for a bima is the bima, although it's used for the Sefer Torah, but it says here in the Yerushalmi it only has Kedushas Beis HaKnesses, the bima, and although I don't know if the Bavli agrees, I don't recall, but we hold that they're usually made out tonight, that people can lean on them. But the once happened, I was leaning on the bima here, and somebody came in and he gave me Musar. He said, "What are you leaning on the bima?" Because you're not allowed to, right? But we assume usually in a base medrash or a yeshiva, the bima's made out tonight, the people should actually lean there.
Same person that saw you without your jacket. That's what.
No, it was a different person. But it just shows what you're up against. But in any event, wouldn't happen in Skokie, I don't think. But
They would wonder why you're not leaning.
right, oh yeah. But actually, but here it sounds like it's okay because it says bimo here ein b'hem mishum kedusha saron v'yesh mishum kedusha beis haknesses. The aron you can't get on off from. The beis haknesses you can't get on off from. So I'm not sure. Maybe though I don't know. England, it sounds like England, but it's not. It's another type of bima. We don't know exactly what it is, but some kind of bima. So the England, ein bo mishum kedusha saron, again has no kedusha saron. Yesh bo mishum kedusha beis haknesses. Rabbi Yirmiyah azal legavlona. He went to city called Gavlona. Chamsun, he saw, very interesting. Yavun bakusha. They put the bakusha is the yad, the arona. Isn't that amazing? That was a problem. To put the yad in the aron. You know what the yad is? You know, the pointer?
Yeah.
Right.
So, but what heter they have? The aron is designated only for Sefer Torah. What heter's there put a yad inside?
You're using it for Kriyas Torah.
So what?
So it's a cake.
It's not a tashmish Sefer Torah, it's your tashmish.
It's a cake.
Can you put your laser pointer in the aron kodesh?
But isn't it like a really? It's also tachshit, sort of an adornment for the Sefer Torah.
It depends what they look like. Some of them are heinous, hideous, and ugly, right? So he said. So Taka, why could they do that? So he says, us shol Rabbi Ami came as Rabbi Ami. Amalei, so he said, I knew man. This was like similar to what I told you. L'kachi nula b'tchil. That was the time when they built Aron Kodesh. Even if it's not explicit, it's implicit that stuff like that you can put in the Aron. And the other example, of course, is the crowns, the crowns for the Sefer Torah that you can put also inside. Yeah, but a lot of times they don't put them on the safer inside. They store them in there. Right. So store them below, right? So that's on the side, so that's you have to say it's out tonight, because otherwise on top you could put it, but on the side. And here they store the shofar, a whole bunch of things on the bottom, the stalker pushka. So amen. So you have to say it's made out tonight. Okay. Rabbi Yonah avad le migdol. Rabbi Yonah made for himself a bookcase. Va'asnei alav, and he made the condition. The bookcase was Eloi, the upper shelf, the Sfarim B'Sefer Torah. Aroi, the lower shelves near the ground. The money will be for clothing. It was prosperous space. Mitbachos. If you sell game animation, you sell wrappings, lochim bohem, lochim sfarim. You can use them by sfarim. I feel mitbachos Torah. Even if you sold mitbachos of a Torah or chumashim, the 5 books, Lokech ben Nevi'im, you can use them to buy Nevi'im Uksuvim. Because Nevi'im Uksuvim are still higher Madrega than Mitpachos. Svarim, however, if you sold Svarim, however, Loichel Mitpachos, you can't buy the wrappings. Afil Nevi'im Uksuvim. Even if you sold Navi, Ein Lochem ben Michos, you can't use it to buy wrappings. Torah v'chumashim, if you have, you can't buy even to buy the wrappings of Torah chumashim. Now, korchim Torah made pachos Torah, you wrap a Torah with wrappings of a Torah. Chumashim, the 5 books of Moses, when they're written separately, made pachos chumashim with wrappings of a chumash. Nevi'im made pachos Nevi'im with wrappings of Nevi'im. Torah v'chumashim made pachos and Nevi'im ksuvim. You also wrap.
We're talking about wrappings.
Like our mantles. Okay, that's a wrapping.
So you take it when it says wrappings of Chumash, you take out. I'm not exactly. I can't visualize it. The phrase.
Their Chumashim were made 5 scrolls.
Okay, so they have 5 scrolls, but it says you can wrap a scroll with the Chumash.
No, wrap a scroll or a Torah Sefer or Chumash with a wrapping made for a Navi. But not a wrapping made for a Chumash or Torah may use to wrap a Navi. Okay? Avalon of being Ksuvim being Pachos Torah Chumashim. Knows the Torah Gabi, Torah can put a Torah on top of a Torah, the Chumash Gabi Chumashim, Chumash on top of Chumash. The Torah v'Chumashim and a Torah and a Chumash Gabi being Ksuvim and a Torah Chumash and a Navi Ksuvim. Avalon of being Ksuvim but not a Navi Ksuvim, Gabi Torah Chumashim on top of Torah Chumashim.
That's
right?
only by when it's written
handwritten.
by hand.
Yeah, but where Makbid you usually put Chumashim on top. In other words, if everything was handwritten, you really have to do hierarchies. But since everything is printed, we're not so Makbid, but we still are Makbid to put Chumashim on top. Not Maker at the end, but it's a Chumrah. Okay, that's I saw that once 3 years ago in the River of Ephraim, in the name of Reb David Feinstein, I believe, being said down. Right.
And what about a siddur?
No, not Makbid on siddur.
And what goes on top? A siddur on top of the chumash?
No, chumash top the siddur, unless the siddur is handwritten, because handwritten has more kedusha than anything. Well, that's unlikely.
Are you saying there is such a hierarchy?
You really meant to ask about a Tilas Hashem siddur versus an Ashkenaz.
So are you saying that we really have not kept the hierarchy, but just the chumash is separate?
Symbolic.
But so that's the only thing.
Right. Okay. But I know people who were very makbid chumash on top of Navi, on top of school they taught us that way. In Hank they taught us we had to be makbid, but I'm not as firm as I used to be when I was in Hank. Yeah.
I'm not 100% certain. I don't think the briskers hold like that.
Because they probably hold everything printed as no kedusha.
That's right.
Yeah, that makes sense. It sounds like a brisker thing. Okay. They don't hold of things like sentimentality. You can't say chumash is sentimentally hard. It almost doesn't watch it. A very non-brisk. Okay. Says Rabbi Yirmiyah B'Shem Rabbi Zir said Torah v'chumashim orak tanimine. The hierarchy between a Torah and Chumash, our Tana ran away from. He didn't tell us what goes on top. The truth is, it should say the Torah goes on top of Chumash. Right? Chumash Torah seems to hold it, but it's not clear. The Tana never addressed it because he himself is not sure. Perhaps Torah and Chumash are just equivalent. Koizin Torah Nevi'im Kachas. You can write Torah Nevi'im on one long scroll, even though eventually the Nevi'im will be wrapped on top of the Torah. You may not. You can. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yitzchak said, Torah v'chumashim kedusha achasei. Torah and chumashim are really the same kedusha. Ein oisim Torah chumashim. You cannot make a Torah into a chumash. You can't cut it up. I've lost in chumash Torah, but you can make chumash Torah, and then it's valid for laning, in fact, as well. Amar Beisir said, Adam ra Torah shasah chumashim kedusha asay. This tells us since you're not allowed to turn the Torah into chumashim, if you did, it retains its kedusha as a sefer Torah, and you cannot sell it. Except for whatever you can sell Sefer Torah for, despite the fact that you subdivided it. Rosh Hashanah Nachman said, B'Shem Yerush said Torah Chasera. If a Torah which is missing parts, such as whole chumash, because it's only one chumash out of 5, ain't korban b'rami, not allowed to lay it in public. V'atani, didn't we learn that vibracious? In order to leave in Sefer Torah, you don't have to have full Sefer. It has to be have embraces up to the Mabul. In Vayikra ad Vayiba Yom Hashmini, that's the first 2 parashas. B'Vaydaber and B'Midrai Vayibin Soharon, which is in this week's parasha. If you have that, mutal l'kroso b'Ravin, that's sufficient. So it seems quite clear they don't need a whole Sefer Torah or laying in public. So it says the more it should be kihado. The answer is like that case of Asrikinus, Arsakinus, a certain Roman nobleman. Okay, writes who liked Torah. The Tambore, and he was in the city of Tambore. Also in Shalom Rabbi Yirmiyu, Rabbi Yonah, Rabbi Yossi, he came and asked Rabbi Yonah, Rabbi Yosa, Malikros B'Sefer, can you read in the Sefer, which is Chotzer, which is lacking, like a Chumash, but Rabbi in public. Amalon, so they said to him, Asr, it's forbidden. Lo do Asr, not that it's truly forbidden, Ela mean golden, Amshena Aguma, the same thing as we have by shul stones, not to use another shul, because since you're upset that you can't lay from it, Inun Zazam L'achor, they'll buy themselves another Sefer Torah. So really, the reason why we don't let people lay on Chumash, it sounds like it's not Mikra Adin. That's why, but if your Sefer Torah is possible, one Chumash is kosher, that's good enough, right? But the reason why we don't let you lay out of a Chumash by itself is in order to promote, to provoke you to buy a Sefer Torah, or to recombine the Chumash Meh, because you'll be upset that we're not properly letting you lay from it. Okay? Says the Gemara, V'chein Moseir. It says whatever's left over you have to use from the excess of a purchase has to be used for the same purpose as the original funds. Mimashu Gov, V'chein Moseir, now we say Mimashu Gov, Mimashu Gov Gaboid Stock of Osiru. The average Gaboid stock of 3,000. Now, of course, nowadays I know you'd say they pocket it, but no, this is talking about when the Gaboid stock are worse than steer people, and there are even some like that today, believe it or not. Okay, so you have Gaboid stock collected, and the leftover. What's the status? So Rabbi Chia Babo Azli l'Chokado. It's starting from here. Chia Babo went l'Chometz, a certain city. The Abel Pidin, they gave money. L'Mifgol Yisamaya l'Armalos to give out to orphans and widows. Nafak, so he went and he had extra. Paul Rabbani gave it to the rabbis. So it's interesting, there's a big machlokas rishonim, or achronim, I should say. Was he a Gabite stock? And for here is he a Gabite stock if he has excess funds is allowed to give them out to whoever he wants at his discretion? Or was he in fact not a Gabite stalker? And a Gabite stalker is really not allowed to distribute any except to the people from whom he collected. Because really when he collected, he was zoicha for them. And Rabbi Chia Barabba only was allowed to because he was not a Gabite stalker. So he's not a Gabite stalker. When he collected, he wasn't zoicha for the people for whom he was collecting, but rather he was gathering funds for his own disbursement. And therefore, in fact, if he has extra, he's allowed to give to wherever he wants. And I think the latter position is more halachically reasonable. Because again, a Gabite stalker, when he collects, as if he's kinder for the Yisraelim and Almonos. Supposed to, if he's not a Gabite stalker, he's an amateur collector, so then he can do whatever he wants with it.
We got lots of amateur collectors.
Okay.
So if he's not a Gabite stocker, is he considered a shliach, like shliach mitzvah?
No, he's not even a shliach. He's a ma'aseh, somebody who gets people to do mitzvahs. Okay, that's all. So that's why you can change it. What about, where in such a case, ma'oshi tzorech la'afish tachtein? The question is, in such a case where he did change the money over, does he have to now go and make a shloma to Yisraelim and Almonos from his own household, or not?
You can't bring a proof from the score either way what Reb Zera's status is.
Right, we can't. It's just that the Rishonim argue. Okay, Reb Zera ma'atzorech lafish tachtein, you have to set aside other ones instead. As long as you give it to a reasonable cause, you don't have to separate others instead. Rabbi Yasser Shem Eliezer ma'atzorech lafish tachtein, you don't have to separate others instead, as long as you give it to a reasonable cause. Rabbi Yaakov Brach, Rabbi Yasser, Rabbi Eliezer Shem Eliezer said, Kol ha-mitzvos ha'cheloni not nulugizbarin. All mitzvahs, before you give it to the treasurer for that mitzvah, at Rosh Hashanah you may change it. Mishnit l'gizbarim, what's given, however, to the treasurer, ain't at Rosh Hashanah you're not allowed to change it, because, again, as I said, the Gizborim already koine, the treasurers are koine for the people from whom they are collecting. Okay? You cannot sell a shul which belongs to the masses to an individual. They said in Cain, you cannot sell in that case from a large city, let's say a bima, to a small city. Let's say at a bima in a large shul. So you should be able to sell to a small shul. Why? Because less people will be using it. So that should be considered to be diminishing kedusha. Okay, so says the Gemara, the principle I told you before. Shlosher and Beis HaKnesses, 3 people from the shul, a committee. Beis HaKnesses. See, we're concerned with committees already a long time. Beis HaKnesses, they like the shul. The Shiva Bnei Yair and the 7 members of the city are Bnei Yair. Says Marmana Konia, what are you talking about? Him b'shekibu aleim. If the people of the shul have accepted these 3 people as their representatives, so why need 3? I feel echad, even one guy. This is a self-appointed committee, right? So the committee of machers, right? How many people does it make who's on the committee? 3, 7, 26. What difference does it make, right? So it says the Gemara, we're talking about this, but stop. We're talking about a P, and the Pnei Moshe explains very nice. It says it's a committee, a standing committee, which is selected by the shul, but not for the purpose of specifically selling the shul. So that depends. If they were talking about a case, why need 3 and not 1? If it's one guy, even if he's like the president, since they didn't delegate him the responsibility of selling the shul, he's not allowed to. But if it's 3 guys, and they delegated them like a presidium responsibility, then they're allowed to go and actually take the initiative and sell the shul. It's an interesting thing. Okay, in other words, one person does not have the same authority as 3, even implicitly, right? The 3 automatically have more implicit authority than 1.
It sounds like it's a base thing.
Right, it obviously has something to do with like deliberations which they would have about how to do it properly. Okay? Says Mana, very interesting more. Very interesting. Not in Bavli. Oh, maybe it is. We'll say it might be. I take that back. I go to your shul and I pledge money and make a mishaberach. Happens, right? I go to your shul and make a mishaberach. So nois and imoyim, I have to give with the people that are the city. However, let's say 10 people from Beis Tefillah come to Kins, down there, or anywhere, I don't know, you name it. If we all come together in Pasuk B'Acheres, then we can go back and give it to in our own place. If we're Yechidim, we're Tafel to wherever we go. But if we're at Tzibur, then we retain our character, and even though we made pledges in your shul, not that we said explicitly we're giving to Kins, right, or whatever shul, but we said we're giving matana. So we can give a matana to our shul. Isn't that interesting? You can go back home and give it to your shul. Okay? So says the Gemara, what's an example of that? Rabbi Chia b'Shem Yonatzah Gonahain Sapsal the Ma'onia. The people come to the marketplace in Ma'onia. Sapsal is like the benches that used to have the market. So they used to give tzedakah. They used to pledge tzedakah in public. So they used to give all when they got home to their respective places. Kada Rabbi Chelbo Havadarsh B'Tzvar. And like this case, Rabbi Chelbo is darshan Tzipori. Pasuk Tamani made a pledge there. Asa Boilam Mason Ochs. He wanted to come when he came back to Tveri. He wanted to give him Tveri the money. Not is so. Rabbi Yam, Rabbi said, you're an individual, and therefore you must pay up where you made your pledge. Not here. Okay, if somebody who pledged or gave as a donation a candle or a candelabrum to shul, now this is talking about the Mashbiach says specifically a goy. A goy gave a candle or a candelabrum to shul. So until the name of the owner is forgotten, you have to leave it there because of Darkei Sholem, right? Can't put him elsewhere. Once it was forgotten who gave it, you can put it somewhere else. Now, that of course leads to problems, especially if you don't learn the Mashbiach. It's talking about Goyim, that it's talking even about Jews. So therefore, Jews have to come with a solution because if I give something to shul, I don't want it someday to end up in the warehouse. So we came up with this ingenious solution as Jews. What solution we come up with? We devised a special thing, which makes sure that the name is never forgotten. Do you know what the special thing we devised is?
YouTube.
Close.
memorial plaque.
The plaque, right? Says the Gemara, the plaque. The Helica plaque says here. It said, if the name of the original owner was carved upon them, so the name is never forgotten by him. Case Antoninus also menorah base Antoninus was a goy. At least at this stage made a menorah for shul. Shama Rebbe heard V'amar, he said, Baruch Elokim asher nosam li b'lasos menorah. Baruch Elokim that he made a menorah base Agnesis. Shroy it's a boy Ma Omar Rebbe. What did Rebbe say? Baruch Elokim or Baruch Elokeinu? In Omar Baruch Elokim, we said Baruch Elokim Adamara. Here that means the Lloyd's Antoninus. Antoninus was not yet a gear. There's a gear in the Leiden manuscript. These Gair Antoninus. Okay, it was the exact opposite. And in Omar Baruch Elokeinu Adamara, the is Gair Antoninus that he did become a gear, and the gear in the Ksavi at Leiden is the Lloyd's Gair Antoninus. So the truth is the question is how Baruch Elokeinu can mean my God and Antoninus' God. It's the Baruch Elokeinu, which just means my God and not Antoninus' God. So Baruch Elokeinu would be a raya that he did convert. So Baruch Elokeinu would be a raya that he didn't convert, right? Or I could say the exact opposite. That Baruch Elokeinu means our God, not his God, right? And Baruch Elokeinu means the God of both of us. I'm not specifying my God. So that's why there are two different Gersos into what exactly the resolution is here.
I've never heard Elokeinu being referred to as two gods.
What do you mean two?
Two gods.
No. Chas v'sholom. No, that doesn't mean according to either perspective.
Then what's
Elokeinu either means our God to the exclusion of Antoninus' God, or our mutual God because Antoninus converted. Our mutual God, right? Okay. So but he Chas v'sholom, he didn't mean Antoninus' God. No, even if Antoninus didn't convert, it didn't mean his God. Okay. Show me it's each meaning of these guarantees. This is an exact repetition of a story we had earlier in the Masechta. Each meaning there are those who say that there are those indications. These guarantees they became a care. Each meaning there are those occasions. Those guarantees they didn't become a care. Roa, so for example, Rosa Yotza Mimina Post Yom Kippur, they saw him walking out in a torn shoe on Yom Kippur, which indicates he didn't become a ger, right? Says more much, we drive to that. They're allowed to go out in public like that if it's the dangerous to walk or their istinuses. Antinus Rebbe. Antinus said to Rebbe, Mechaltiat meaning Glosim Ba'amadasi was feeding me from Livios in the world to come. Armalain, so he said yes. Armalain min Emar Pitzcha lo achaltai. It didn't let me eat from the Korban Pesach. Liviosa Mechali, you're going to let me eat from the Liviosa? Armalain said, what can I do? It says by the Pesach, no uncircumcised person can eat it. Came the Shamin Cain, once he heard this, also the Gazar, he went and got a bris milah. Asagabe, he came back to Rebbe. Armalei, so he said to Rebbe, Chamik Zirosisi, I got a bris. Armalei, so Rebbe said, Bedidi lo istakoltis mi amai, I never look at my own bris. El Bedidach, I'm going to look at yours. For Lamani Krashmo, Nachum Ish Kodesh Kodashim, why was it an individual called Nachum Ish Kodesh Kodashim? Shalei B'tzuras Mabam Yamav, he never looked at the image of a coin in his days. Hadamras teaches us if you got a bris milah, these Garantinis. Milan the Rabbanan, there's another words of Rabbanan, that is Gair Antoninus, which also indicates it was Megair, although here the Leiden manuscript has gears of the lowest Antoninus. I know exactly how that will work. Dam Rabbi Chizka, Rabbi Avobish, Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Chizka, the name Rabbi Avobish, the name Rabbi Lazar, in Boyan and Gerrit said, the righteous converts come in the world to come, so Antoninus Barbarosham, Antoninus will come at their head. So that also sounds like he converted. Okay? Alright, the next story is really something else. We'll stop here for tonight.